Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is Amit Singh, CEO at Alcor Solutions, and we are here for another great session of Evolve 21, our insightful talks with technology industry leaders. Evolve 21, Alcor's digital series, has proved to be a pretty cute learning initiative covering various industry verticals and technologies that surround digital transformation. It gives me immense pleasure to carry it forward today with a conversation on digital transformation in the medical devices industry. I'd like to welcome and introduce to you our guest for the day, Pankaj Tiwari, the Vice President and CIO of Penumbra. Welcome, Pankaj.
Thank you. Good meeting you, Amit.
All right, really good to have you here. So to share your experience with the audience, Pankaj, Pankaj is the Vice President CIO of Penumbra. He has been a technology and transformational leader with over 20 years of experience in medical devices, healthcare, software building, managed services, semiconductors, solar, as well as high-tech manufacturing. So a very well-rounded resume. His expertise includes implementing complex business and technology operations focused on business transformation, going from legacy to cloud to mobile to data and where not. And really the transformation that significantly enhances profitability, productivity, and efficiency of the business enterprise. Over his career span, Pankaj has gained specialization in strategy, business and IT planning, outsourcing, multi-shore global teams, mentoring and team development of senior executives, M&A integration, which can be pretty tricky. Obviously, business process reengineering and IT implementations, but more so really IT end-to-end. Whether you look at it from a business process perspective or IT implementations, large-scale IT operations, data, GRC, SOX, and whatnot, right? As a CIO, the buck stops here, right, Pankaj? The buck stops here.
I would hope so.
And it's really that rich experience that makes Pankaj a very seasoned digital transformation executive. And I'm very pleased to have him here. And I'm sure the audience will also enjoy the CIO's perspective that we intend to discuss on multiple digital transformation questions and discussion points. So Pankaj, to start with, I would love to kick this off with a fairly high level topic and get some of your perspective on digital transformation itself. And so the question that I would ask would be, according to you, right, personally, what does digital transformation mean for today's business leaders? And as a corollary to that, how would you define your journey as you took the first steps towards digital transformation?
Great question, Amit. I think in current world, if you see in last couple of years, this word is being talked about a lot: digital transformation. And people think, at least in my mind, I think it's not something very different than what technology has been doing all along. For different companies, digital transformation can mean different things, right? Depending upon where the company where you are at, where they are in their cycle of growth, and where they are in the cycle of their technology transformation, right? So if I take Penumbra, for example, when I joined Penumbra, we had just gone public, and we had a very small IT team. Even our emails and calendars were not working properly. So, for us, we started it from that point, saying, what, let's put a system in place where people can talk to each other, set up the calendars right. And I would even define that as a digital transformation versus when you are talking about Facebooks of the world and Googles of the world or Ubers of the world, their digital transformation journey is very different. So I think, we all have to just look from the lens of what is needed from where we are in our current situation in the company we are in.
Very, very true. Yeah, yeah, and it's. I guess the word does get overused, and at the end of the day, it's like cloud. You know, someone asked me once, "What does cloud mean to you?" And I said, "Well, cloud can mean a lot of things to different people." So the same thing. And how were your first steps, Pankaj? You know, you talked about starting out with email, automating email and making sure the basic systems worked well. What were those foundational steps, if you sort of think back about them?
You mean specifically to Penumbra?
Yes,
Right.
yes, in
Yeah.
your
So I
journey.
mean, so Penumbra was at a very interesting stage when I joined. As I said, they had just gone public. We had invested very heavily in our product. We had come up with a product which was being adapted pretty heavily in the stroke market. Uh, but to further scale the company the way we were, technology was one of the limiting factor at that point. We all understood that, yeah, we
I
need
see.
technology. So people knew that we needed technology, but still, we didn't know in what form and fashion. So it was very important for me to come in and first of all identify what are the areas where we want to focus, and
I
then
see.
what kind of journey we want to embark on, because different people have different thought process, they had different expectations, and bringing everybody together to have that common vision from the technology perspective was, I would say, very important. And I spent almost in the first 9 months just defining that what it should be our strategy, and before just going ahead and starting a massive transformation.
Wow. I mean, that must have been some doing, really building that common vision as you define it.
Definitely, definitely. I mean,
Nice.
one thing which I started, I remember my first presentation, it has 2 slides, and one of them was only where we talked about what should be our approach to technology. And, I talked about a lot about people, process, data, technology. And again, this is which you would see a lot of people talk about that. But here at
Right.
Penumbra, actually, that is very much now ingrained in our DNA. For any technology transformation which we do, we always take it through that path. So,
Very nice. Very nice. So moving on, Pankaj, a little bit about cloud. You were talking about email. Do you think cloud has completely changed this landscape of what the definitions of digitization were, say, 5, 7 years back, even now, versus what they are now?
definitely. See, again, first of all, what cloud has done is it has speed up the innovation, right? The speed of innovation has gone rapidly. Whether
Yeah.
you are a technology company or not directly, is still, is somehow it has affected every part of a company to innovate faster. And with, if we leverage cloud faster, then we can also help companies to, be on their rapid innovation path. Earlier, if you think about, if company's product is doing good, but there are a lot of back office functions which were holding them back to try out different market segments, try out different ways of selling and
Right.
supporting your customers. With cloud, I think now you don't have to start things from the scratch. There are a lot of great technologies out there. If you have a right path to adoption,
Mhm.
I think you could help support companies' innovation. And it has been happening more and more, I would say, in last decade or so. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, and I think it has made everybody's life easier in some ways, but also complicated in some ways too.
Yes, in fact, that is really as an aside, I often wonder this with the pace of change becoming so rapid, new technology coming up every 6 months, right? Uh, how do you manage to keep to that vision or that roadmap that you built out on cloud, or do you sort of change it rapidly? What's your process or secret sauce of staying abreast, but still not getting so carried away that you risk everything on a bet that's not fully proven?
Right. So actually, you brought up a really good point. I mean, there's new technology coming up every 6 months, right? And it's not about what technology, what kind of technology is coming out in the market. It's like, what is the pain point you're trying to solve? What is the
Yeah.
value you're trying to create? Yeah, and that's one of the things what I was hinting towards, saying that it makes our life difficult sometimes too, because there are a lot of technology out there and everyone promises taking you to another cloud, right? So you
Yeah.
keep jumping from cloud to cloud to cloud, uh, without making sure that you are getting benefit of what you set out to do. And that's what, bringing it back to what I talked about, people, process, data, technology. Yeah, one thing when you talk about cloud, most of the companies, product companies would be like, yeah, it's a 6 weeks implementation and it does exactly what you want. And that sounds pretty interesting. And, sometimes people get too much bought into it. But, most of the times it's the challenge is not that technology is not there. The challenge is also that you don't have the people with the right skill sets. You don't have the processes which are well defined. So at Penumbra, we take a lot of effort to making sure that before we get onto any technology, new or old, we spend significant amount of time pre-implementation, ensuring that we have our processes well defined. We have the people who are available both from IT and business to support it. And also at the tail end of it, if you think about, when you implement a system, actually most of the times people say that, yeah, I implemented XYZ application and now, the project is done, I'm moving on to another one.
Right.
Actually at Penumbra, we also focus quite a bit at saying, once you complete a project, that is actually not a, end of that automation. Actually, now you have implemented a technology, you need to now start measuring and improving further to make sure that you are achieving what you set out for.
Right.
Otherwise, we don't get benefited. We just keep jumping from one place to another and still continue to think why it is not working for us.
Yeah, yeah, very, very true. That change in the organization, and it takes time to get used to something and really be able to get value out of it. Right. It's yeah, that's then that's something that I we see across our clients, we see across in our discussion. In fact, just these last 2 weeks, the 6-7 discussions we've had, that has been one of the dominant topics of what does one do with those two, the challenges posed by this rapid growth. And you see the pot of the gold, right, with the new technology that I could actually do better. But then, things that slow it down, you talked about people reskilling, right, or upskilling. And also this, this post-COVID, this great game of people, not wanting to continue to do what they were doing, or not sort of, still staying, as a remote worker. There's been talks of a great resignation wave that's going on, that's roiling the industry. All of those obviously have to be considered as you plan to get advantage of any new technology.
Yeah, and also, some of these changes which you're talking about, it layers additional anxiety and workload and whatnot. You're also seeing now people getting burned out with, again, just jumping from one place to another, from one technology to another. So as you said, pace of change is also equally important. I mean, business is growing along with that. You are constantly changing technology, and people are not getting time to fully grasp the benefits of these.
Yeah. No, very good. And then we'll talk more about these challenges in a bit, but I wanted to sort of get your perspective as a CIO. You've been a leader that's brought in a lot of change, digital transformation spanning the gamut, in the last few years as you took Penumbra through this journey. From really from SaaS to ZaaS, or from, application service SaaS to ZaaS, right? From A to Z. What have been the key steps for you in this journey?
Right. And again, I would keep harboring, the thing which I was started to say, I was saying earlier. If you take from, as you said, from various, asses, I call it, as a service, and it could be anything, right? It's funny, if you take out the qualifier, it is just an as, and that's what actually it is. most of the times when people look at any of these services, they think the path to that particular service is so easy. Somebody else is managing it, somebody else is implementing it, and all I have to tell them is what I need, right? So there was quite a bit of that going on here at Penumbra too, where business was like, yeah, I think it's easy, I can get it done. And when I joined, there were a lot of different applications and systems which we had bought, and they were not working for us. And the question was, which was being asked, was like, it works for other companies, why it is not working for us? And we had a good implementation partner. We had a good, we have bought one of the best systems out there, and we have spent a lot of money, but we are not getting any benefit out of it, right? And that's where my engagement with the business started happening, saying, what, it's not about technology. It's, again, I talk about people, process, data, and technology, right? So we need to start from that journey before we get to technology. And as part of that initiative, believe it or not, Amit, we capped a lot of technology initiatives which were going on. We are like, we cannot just do all these things in parallel right now. When I joined Penumbra, we are like 7 people in IT. So you could sense, how many of these projects can we take on together with business, right? And also the thought was at that time, oh, we don't need IT's help. Business can do it on their own. And they had tried of that on their own. And as I said, most of them were not working the way the expectation was. So we, first of all, we said, to support the growth of the company, we need to have the right team. And in the last 5 years, I was looking at our headcount a few weeks back, we are now 100 people plus.
Wow.
So, we started investing heavily building our IT team to support various business initiatives, which, either business has expectation of or we're already in works. And then working with the business, we also set out a very structured plan saying, what is important for us at any given time. And we started putting a lot more structure around it. And not only that, before we started implementing any technology, I actually also put a team called Process Reengineering team. We put a team where if anybody wants to automate any system, we take this team, they do the Kaizen for that process. We come up with the list of things which between IT and business, we can solve that pain right now without even implementing new systems. And, if a business says, I'm very busy, I don't have time to fix this process right now, guess what? We even cap that project too. So it's like, once we have time to fix our process, that's when we will think about implementing any technology.
Very interesting.
So that helped us quite a bit, again, to align what our actual priorities are, right? Sometimes when we do a business process reviews and these Kaizen activities or Gemba walks, we find out that, there are a lot of things which we could do right now without even investing any money. And we start putting the roadmap around it. We put our PMO practice. We said, let's start working on these things before we even talk about technology. So the path to, get to technology, we have made it pretty longer. So right now, if you want to buy a system, we are not going to go start negotiating and buying a system. We'll talk about, spend quite a bit of time talking about, does IT and business, with everything going on, can we take on this project? If yes, then let's do a process review and improvement project, and then we'll get to technology. The beauty of this is, by the time we get to technology, we have a very clear vision that what we want out of this technology. And also it shortens our technology implementation then, because then we have done a lot of process improvement, we have defined our requirements, let's go buy a system and implement it, and then revisit and see whether we really got what we wanted or not. So that's a journey. Again, it's very easy to talk about it, but very hard to implement. Even 5 years of me discussing and educating and sharing this with my business, every month I get a call, Pankaj, can I get this SaaS application or this application or that application? And I have to start the discussion again from that point, saying, yes, you can, but let's do this first. And, again, every company has a philosophy to certain things. That's how, at least at Penumbra, we approach to technology.
Very interesting. The key steps that you talked about, right? What it prevents you from doing is just doing technology for technology's sake. It prevents burnout. It also, because value realization only happens when business starts to use the technology. Only then you truly say, right, that, yeah, I'm getting value out of it. It has shortened my time to something, or I can do more with less. But if you just do technology for technology's sake, or if you simply say, I am transforming technology, but I'm not changing my processes. Well, if it was a bad process, you're executing that bad process faster, so you're making things worse in that way.
Exactly. And sometimes, first to comment on your what you mentioned earlier, when you implement technologies and it is not being adopted by business for whatever reason, it's also pretty demotivating for both sides, IT as well as business. Because they all put a lot of effort, and for whatever reason it's not working, and then at some point, if it is not managed well, it becomes blame game. People start losing trust on each other. So it creates a lot of all these other friction if it is not done right. So that's why it's important we approach it with a little bit methodical thought process.
Very nice. No, this is a very, very good point, Pankaj. Thank you for sharing that, because folks do spend a lot of time thinking about what technology, and quite not as much time looking at the process side of it. Obviously, also the timing. I think that was second big thing we talked about, and third, the potential impact on people, on teams. The adaptation, and then finally, really the soft impact of, if it doesn't do, or if you were not able to take it to a level where it really worked, the cost of that on folks, you're right, from, in terms of, the motivation of the team definitely suffers. So thank you for sharing that with the people here.
And another comment on the same one is, Amit, we think that when we start implementing technology, there would be somebody from outside who will come and tell us what the best practices are.
Right.
I think that's a myth. When you get a technology, if you get a technology guy, for example, whatever system you are implementing, most of the times you get a technology guy. You don't get a process person who knows, what the best practices from the process perspective is. They can tell you this system can, for example, execute an order 15 different ways, but it is up to us to decide, what works for you as a company out of those 15 approaches. So if you don't do that, then, during implementation, you kind of, once you are in active implementation, the focus is on scope, the focus is on, as you said, time, the focus is on budget. So it's more operational. It becomes more operational than at that time value creation. So you have to do that all upfront. And then you also have to do it at the tail end, saying that, yes, now we got the system, we learned a lot about it. Some of the things which we didn't understand earlier, now we can define that process better and further leverage that system. So actually, that's another thing which we put a lot more emphasis on, or we are trying to put a lot more emphasis on is, once the project is done, how do we still stay on that project and make sure that that project is, delivering the value which we expected out of that.
Very, very good point. Yes. No, loving this this perspective of, make it measurable value, and to get the value, it's really the preparation in the beginning. Obviously, you need the right implementation, but it's really the preparation in the beginning of knowing what you want, and documenting the processes, prepping the ground, making sure your team is ready. And then after the implementation is done, not to just say it's done, right? But to really start saying, okay, there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Exactly. That's when the real fun starts.
Yes. And then that part, a lot of us consultants do not get to see, when your clients say that, hey, we are very busy. You're like, no, but your implementation is done. Yeah, but the work starts now.
Right.
Very true.
Most of the process also, have a life. So, once you improve the process, after a certain point, they also again to start evolve. So you have to come back and revisit them, make sure that whether you need to fine tune your process or your system to continuously evolve your processes and making sure they are efficient.
Correct. Correct. No, thank you. Thank you. So, a couple of other questions that I have on the similar topic. We've covered some of it in this, impromptu way, which I'm really enjoying it. From a CIO's perspective, right? Whether talking from business, because you obviously have that unique perspective as well as a unique, a position of closely working with business, overseeing, your organization, planning for future, the budgetary constraints, all of those. When you look at all of those, right, what are the key steps, along with the ones we've discussed, that need to be taken to prepare for bridging this gap that we just talked about, right? And really transform IT's value? What else do you look at?
You see, I have worked in various different industries before coming to healthcare. I was in med devices. Before med devices, sorry, I was in semiconductor. So different companies also have different approach and expectation from technology or from IT. So I think understanding that what is it that company values the most is very fundamental for IT team. I mean, you can't take the same approach and apply to any company where you're working at. I have realized, like, for example, life sciences industry as a whole, whatever we do is very profound. Every device we make goes into saving somebody's life, right? So quality is of utmost important. We just cannot, go around it. So there's a lot of focus and attention to details to making sure that a product is of a very high quality. And that seeps into, and I think the one thing I've come to realize, it can only happen, you can make a good product if there's a lot of peace and harmony and trust within the leaders. And I think Penumbra is a living example of that. I mean, there is so much help and support and harmony within the leaders. And we try to inculcate that within our teams too. And with that, we create a product, wonderful products, which are, we feel all very proud of and very vested into saying we are making, saving people's life, affecting their quality of life. So any strategy, any execution which we do over here at Penumbra is, with that mindset. So some, and again, like what's a semiconductor where, it was very important for us to manage our timelines and budgets and the scope. Here, it's very important to make a quality product, right? So whether it is implementation of a system or implementation of a product, we actually imbibe the same kind of philosophy here. So we don't rush to meet any timelines. So when we, define any objective here at Penumbra, it is to set up, our plan is to meet that objective. Again, it's not like, we say we're going to do it in 12 months, we end up doing it in 5 years. I mean, there is still a lot of focus and attention to get it done on time. But at the same time, we do not circumvent our processes and whatnot to achieve our goals. So, so at Penumbra, I would say, first of all, for me, it was unlearning a lot of the things which I had learned in my previous experience, and then learning the way you operate in a life sciences medical device industry. And then, the second thing, as I said, it's very important for all of us also to understand, sometimes tech people are like, yeah, they are too tech focused, and we do not understand what our products are, what are our challenges from, all the way from manufacturing it to the point of sale and the support afterwards. So I think, when I joined Penumbra, I spent significant amount of time understanding our business. I even spent time, booking some event and work with customer service and different organizations, going on a sales call to understand what goes on. Where, sitting in my office, it's very hard to define what an IT strategy should be. So I think that all helped me to, first of all, understand the company at a much broader perspective before I could define what our technology roadmap should be. And then, I mean, I was very lucky to have the support of all my peers and execs here at Penumbra. Uh, as I said, it was a very cohesive
Very nice.
process.
And then that does help a lot. I mean, obviously, it helps qualitatively, but also from a quantitative perspective, how many things you take on, it impacts so much of strategy, the team cohesion. So yeah. So in fact, some interesting questions have been cropping up as we were talking. So instead of waiting till the end, since we are in these topics, I'll probably ask some of them. So interesting question, Pankaj. What is more difficult, aligning IT strategy with business strategy, or vice versa? And in today's age where technology is such a big business driver, it could go either way. So what's your take on that?
Well, see, I feel IT is more of an enabler, right? So you can't make IT strategy on a vacuum. If we don't understand what business strategy is, then whatever IT strategy is, it won't be successful. So I think they have to be in tandem. And mostly from my perspective, I say IT strategy is in support of business. But if you do it well, it will come out. And that's where, I say it's more of how do you manage your business leaders, or how do you engage with your business leaders? If you do it well, it actually comes out as a very coherent policy, and it looks like it's their policy, strategy and not yours. And I think that's the trick. It should not look like that IT has a strategy. It's a business strategy. IT is part of that strategy, and that's how I define it.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. I think hopefully whoever asked that question really liked the thought I did. Going back to the talking about strategy and implementation, another question that has popped up is what checkpoints do you pay particular attention to when defining a strategy before an implementation, specifically in a sensitive domain like health? So as you go about the strategy before implementation.
That's a really good question. Again, depending upon, it's very hard to give a generalized answer to, overall implementation. It depending upon what kind of function are you implementing.
Right.
Again, if I have to give one, very broad answer to these things, there are two things which I pay attention to, and one of them I have not mentioned it yet, is the experience. So actually that is another thing which I created in IT department. Now I have a team which is called Experience Center. So anything which we roll out, what is it at the end of it? Employee experiences, right? So yeah, we said we're going to define the process, we're going to streamline our process, we're going to implement a technology, and then at the end you roll out. Are people happy about it? It's like, at the end of it, when you do a massive system implementation, everybody is upset about it, because why? We did not pay that attention to, again, in a broader term, you call it change management, but employee experience, sales experience, manufacturing experience. So, that is one thing I always pay attention to when we start implementing systems, saying, first of all, yes, are we improving the process or not? But if you are improving the process, is the experience good or not? Because sometimes you can improve the process and experience could go down, and it would seem counterintuitive. Like, why would it be, and I would give you a very good example. For example, if a salesperson is asking for a sales discount, right now, they send an email and it gets approved if you don't have any system, right? But when you put a system in place, you say, if you get 10% discount, you're going to get to manager's approval, 50% discount, director's approval, you go to all the way to CEO approval. Now you have put a system in place, you have put checks and balances in place. And the sales guy, now when he needs a higher level of approval, he's waiting 15 days.
That's right.
Earlier it was half an hour. So you put a system in place, you well-defined your process, and your sales guy is really upset, saying, I didn't need the system, it's not making my life simpler. So, again, now you met a lot of criteria. Now, yeah, we have auditability, we make sure it is getting approved by the right person, but you did not achieve the goal where salesperson can still go make more sales because we are supporting him better. So again, the very broad thing, process and experience are the two things which I look for any project implementation. Besides all the general things, again, I don't want to undermine operation is important. We need to make sure that you have a good, way to manage your project, your scope,
Right.
and your timeline. But I think that has now ingrained in most of the technology people. They know how to do that. That's very methodical. So I'm just hinting about the things where we could, get better at.
That's very valuable. And that's a great example. And you do things for all the right reasons. But if you don't really consider the impact on the experience of the user, it has a potential of not being adopted. I mean, it's the strategy was good, and implementation might have been good, but you missed on the user expectations part. So yeah, that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so moving on, I've got a couple more questions here. Oh my God, they're popping up by the minute. So, but I'll try and stick to the schedule as well and ask them as we go through this. So Pankaj, as you went through your own multi-year, this must have been a massive transformation journey, growing from 5 people to 100. You folks are probably doing, might have started off with 5s and 10s of projects, but I'm sort of, if you're a betting man, I would say it's probably up into 50s and 100s now, right? So what were the key challenges that you face? And we've talked about some of those, but anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah. So first of all, no. So as I said, we are not into 50s and 100s. I'm keeping a pretty tight lid. Actually,
Thank God.
I cancel more projects than start more projects because, as I said, it's important to do the right job rather than just starting multiple projects, right? I mean, one of the things which we are now facing, and that is true with any high growth company, is burnouts, right? I mean, if you start too many projects at the same time, first of all, people's ability to connect all the dots with all the changes you are making in various different systems and whatnot. So we are trying to control that. We are trying to be more thoughtful and methodical about these things. We do our own manufacturing, so there's a lot of manufacturing transformation is happening.
Right.
Because of our growth cycle, there is a lot of G&A transformation which is happening, and along with that, our go-to-market. And one thing is, while we are busy with all these things, we also thought that there is a huge opportunity where we can help people when they get a stroke. They lose a lot of body functions, and
Right.
we wanted to play in a physical therapy world. So we started a immersive technology health function at Penumbra, where now we started putting a head-mounted device with body sensors, and we can track people's body movement and recommend and take them through a virtual reality, gaming world where they can go through various exercises and get better. So with that came a lot of technology from the business perspective. We started collecting a lot of data, and the way we operate completely changed. Because earlier, most of our users were surgeons, like they were using our devices to treat a stroke. Now it has gone to physical therapy world. We started, actually, we just started selling it to the patients directly, kind of. So, the whole way of our selling model changed. And again, from an IT perspective, we have to make sure, again, very rapidly, we build out all these technologies to support our new manufacturing and sales process. So in a way, you're right. I mean, we started quite a bit of these projects, and as we are putting all these processes in place, our model continues to evolve. So even though we have implemented these systems, we continue to go back and reconfigure and restructure them, change our processes. So that's why, we are trying to hire as much as we could, but we also know, in the market we are in, it's not easy to find good resources. So, so there's a little bit of burnout going out too. So we are slowing our pace, being a little bit more methodical, or trying to be a little bit more methodical in our approach, saying that how do we do it in a more structured fashion. So, and again, as I said, we thought we have defined our process, and after 3 years looking back, it's like, no, we need to further evolve our process of our project intakes, project implementation, and things like that.
This is really a great insight that you shared, because it's so easy for IT folks to just keep on taking projects, building that funnel, and then not being able to really meet that user demand, because you didn't manage the demand intake process itself working with the business, and that has so much downstream impact. I think all the IT professionals that are listening today or will be listening later on probably would be nodding their heads in violent agreement with that method. So I'm really happy. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that sometimes, different department heads, they stop by and thank me after a year saying, thank you, Pankaj, for not letting me start my project. So, which is, we all look and smile at each other that, yeah, I think together we made the right decision of not getting it started.
So some more questions here, folks. I will, as we go through, I will ask them, but we do have to keep to a timeline as well. Hopefully we'll get to ask all of those. But Pankaj, so as you met these challenges, as you mitigated the risks, what was key to you? I think in terms of the strategy that you would recommend for once you've agreed, once you're ready to do something, what would be the strategy to minimize resistance to adoption of these transformations, right? Or doing work in a new manner or a new technology?
Yeah. So, I mean, couple of things, I will come to adoption. Please remind me if I forget. But, before we get to adoption, I would re-emphasize that adoption would not happen if you start your project prematurely. And also if you start, if you are buying it because it's the next shiny object out there. And when I say you, I don't mean just IT, whether it is IT or business. So we have to be very, very mindful going in, because if we are not mindful going in, adoption will not happen. And you have to make it, like a shared ownership between IT and business. Again, it's very easy said that done. But setting the stage up right at the very beginning, saying that, what's the role of IT and what's the role of business? I mean,
Right.
I have seen, it's happening on both sides, especially with all these different, SaaS models, where sometimes business comes in saying, you know what, I don't need IT's help. And they start doing things on their own. And they would have almost a similar fate versus where, on the other side, where IT takes over and they are just trying to run it by themselves with a little engagement from business. So it has to be, very close knit ownership from both IT and business. And, again, there has to be, when we talk about change management, it has to be, again, a two-way street where IT should learn the business and business should learn a little bit about, the technology itself. If we have that meeting of the minds, I think it will be much easier to create adoption. So that is one thing. The second one is like, we started a massive ERP implementation, and, couple of things what we did was, even before we said, okay, let's go and ask business what your requirements are, or what best practices are, and things like that. We spent significant amount of time at the very beginning of it, training people on the ERP system. We said, forget about, what it can do for you. They have some standard trainings that how do you process your invoices? How can you, process your payments and things like that? Why don't we teach everybody or make them aware of the system, so that when we come and ask questions, it's more meaningful, right?
Right.
That's another one. The third one is, I think Agile has done a wonderful thing to technology and the adoption itself. So we are a huge proponent of Agile implementation. When I joined, and once my team got to a significant size, we got everybody trained on Agile. I think now, I think we have 40 people in IT who have a certificate on Safe Agile. And we spent significant amount of time, even business with business, educating them on our Agile process and methodology. So what it does, it is, we now have a lot more connects rather than in a waterfall model, which is an old school. Again, I'm not going to go too much. Everybody knows the difference between the two. But, Agile helps in adoption too, quite a bit. That's all I meant to say. So the more engaged we keep business throughout the implementation, I think it helps in the adoption. And then again, the last one is value creation. So I think if we all have that shared mind of what is the value we are trying to create,
Mhm.
and if we stick to it and we continue to reinforce it, I think that also helps, in my mind, in adoption process too.
That's a very, very good point. Thanks for sharing that, Pankaj. And I'm going to go through a couple more questions that came through, and then move to another question I had on enterprise architecture. But some of the questions that have come up, a couple of them I'll go through quickly. One of the attendees has asked, would you agree that the evolution of business processes works hand in hand with the pace of adaptability of the systems that they run, right? The systems are adaptable as a business processes. And if that is the right premise, what would be your advice to businesses who may be evaluating newer built for purpose technologies, which are marketed to them as quick wins, instead of spending time, effort, and money in exhausting the potential of existing tech?
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
Yeah, again, I think changing the conversation, again, it's not a conversation about tech. Yes, you can buy a new technology. It can possibly, not all the times, can solve some of your problems. With technology, if you're not done right, we all know, it's just that you shift the nature of the problem from one, to another. So having that conversation about what is the problem we are trying to solve, unless we understand that, if the problem is that, yes, my process is so well defined, we have all the great people, and we know exactly what we want, then yeah, then it is maybe possibly a technology problem. But we know more often than not, it's not that simple, right? So if we just jump saying, and believe me, I had few of those conversations too, that, Pankaj, why are you wasting my time having all these discussions? I'm telling you, if you just buy me that new system, it will solve my problem. And it's so, and also, I think, again, it might not sound reasonable coming out from me or not, but sometimes, at a very smaller scale, every so often you have to let business try also, that methodology where, if they tell, yeah, if you give me that technology, it will solve my problem. If they have not experienced it themselves, and you just tell them on a, more theoretical basis, they might not take it. So, you have to even, in a more structured and managed fashion, sometimes let them take that journey, let them experience
Uh-huh.
that what happens when, IT is not involved, what happens when you don't do a due diligence on your processes. And I think that's very meaningful. And if you are engaged in that process in a very meaningful way, actually, then they become your trusted partners. They would actually go and
Right.
campaign on your behalf.
Yeah.
And we have done that quite a bit over here at Penumbra too, where, I don't go and talk to other business leaders. I take one of my partners from the other function. We're like, you know what, do you remember we did this? Now that function is trying to do something similar. I think they would benefit it by hearing your story. So I think that helps quite a bit too. Otherwise, it's just IT guy telling something to the business who doesn't know much about business.
Very powerful. Yeah. And great answer. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that,
Thank you.
Pankaj. Another
Great
quick
question.
question. Yeah, very, very nice. Uh, Another person has asked, given all the functions that a company has, G&A, manufacturing, quality, and so on, how did you go about building a robust technology roadmap that takes all business needs into consideration? Any specific examples that come to mind that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, great question again, and I wouldn't say I have mastered that art. Even if you go around understanding the process, various business functions within a company, by the time you go around once, things have evolved and changed. Again, especially in a company like Penumbra, where we are growing at a very, very rapid pace, right? So it is a constant, I would say, engagement with various different business functions within our my IT department. We have created actually a liaison for every different business function. So within my direct report, everyone has a responsibility of certain business functions. where they, ensure that, I mean, again, some places we are doing it successfully, some places we are still not there, where, we want to make sure that IT is being called into their staff meeting. We try to understand what their strategy and roadmap is, and then constantly bringing it back to IT and making sure that, we are connecting all the dots. But again, I think you all know I'm making it sound too simple. It's more complicated than that, you know.
Very
But
true.
you know,
But the principles stay the same. I mean,
exactly.
I think the key takeaway is that you to stay firm on those principles, because really there is that is the way to do it.
Right.
So great. So another question, and I was debating when to bring that up, but maybe I'll just bring it up. It's from someone that works in the space industry closely with NASA, and their question is, is how do cloud leaders like you, might approach the implementation of cloud technology that could be useful in space, interstellar missions, human space flights. And example he's giving is that, hey, we need very low latency and very high bandwidth over such long distances. And so I'm not sure if it's a technology question that we can answer, or any advice that you can give to this attendee.
Yeah, no, I think very interesting question. And again, I'm no expert in the space, needs or technology, but what comes to my mind very quickly. I mean, a couple of things. Definitely, with the advent of technology earlier, like when all these satellites used to send data and whatnot, we used to store it all across the globe, and sharing of all that data, collating it all together. I mean, that was a huge task. So now with that, I know that Amazon is, now putting some of the services around it too. So now, there is a way to at least bring all that data back into a more, I would say, centralized place to make sense out of it. But also the other thing is, which again comes to my mind with my limited understanding, is, when we are sending data back from a space, I'm assuming the rate of change at a space is not high, right? And if that is the case, with the advent of AI and ML, if we can somehow filter out and only send the bits which have changed, then, first of all, from the source, we are trying not to generate that much data, only to change, sending the data which has, moved and changed. And then on the destination, we can reconstruct those information. I think that would help to bridge some of those gaps. But again, that's with my limited understanding of that.
Excellent. Great thought, actually. Thank you for sharing that thought you had. So moving back, a couple more questions are coming up, but mindful of your time as well. So moving onto the topic that we had. What were the key enterprise architecture principles that you used or leveraged, if there were any sort of guideposts that impacted your decision making?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a couple of things. First of all, again, that because of all the various SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, and different things, right? Now everybody's living in a, I would say, I mean, for the lack of better word, fragmented environment, where you end up with 150, 160 different SaaS applications. You end up with hybrid infrastructures. So it's very important to, and again, when you look from the application perspective, it's important for you to have a really good integration strategy, really great data warehouse strategy, really great master data management strategy. Otherwise, when your system passes through from 6 different systems, it evolves, it transforms, it changes, there's human errors. And then when you bring it out to data warehouse, it's very hard for you to connect all the dots. So we focused on, again, or we are still working on and evolving around making sure that we have a really good integration strategy, we have a really good data strategy, and then at the tail end, which has been one of our very successful initiative, making sure we have a robust capability of making sense out of all that information, and have a good data warehouse and analytics capability. So that is more, I would say, from the application perspective. But then when you talk about, mostly from the infrastructure and various clouds, security is a bigger concern nowadays. So ensuring that, you have a good framework around security. You are not, again, doing security for the security's sake, but,
Right.
you are very mindful to your approach. So we are putting, our security framework around various applications and various infrastructure. And again, one thing which comes from out of all these things is, uh, within IT, you can have only so much of a skill set to support various different data centers, various different, platforms. So what should be our strategy in, what are the expertise we want in-house? Where do we want to partner with, some of our partners outside, vendors? How do we set up our offshore strategy? So there's a lot
Right.
that goes into the play to figure out, I mean, architecture in itself would not, again, make too much sense if you don't have the right team to support it internally and externally.
Very true. Very, very true. I mean, architecture needs to suit a purpose. Not the other way around. So absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that too. And Pankaj, so as a CIO, do you believe that, digital transformation, obviously we talked about, the IT side of it. But does you think not just IT, but it's fundamentally changing how business itself creates value? And if there is obviously the value side to it, there's also the opportunity and the risk side to it, right? So how do you see as an executive, what needs to occupy space in a leader's thought process, and how do you do it?
Very great question, I think. See, Amit, I definitely, if IT done right, can create tremendous value. Again, if I take example of Penumbra, we treat a stroke, right? Which means it's very important for us to have our product at the right place at the right time. Because they cannot just wait. We cannot say, oh, we are backlogged on this product and you will get it 10 days from now. Because if somebody is getting a stroke, they have to be treated within a certain time frame.
Yep.
And technology plays a very, very key role to making sure that we can make our product right, we can make our product on time, we can make sure that we ship it on time. Most of our, again, if I compare with semiconductor industry, we used to have huge backlog, and we're going to send it when we're going to make it, and then they can sell it, right? But here we don't work on a huge backlog. Again, to support all that process, technology can play very, very effective role in making sure that we take away all the frictions, all the inefficiencies in the process, and help business create, that value. And then again, as you said, I mean, with that comes a lot of opportunities and risk, definitely, because if not done right, think about, now the reliance of the company on technology is so much that if your system goes down, in medical device company, for example, you define a process of how you're going to ship it. And if that system breaks down, you cannot ship it that day. So that's the reliance on the system, and it has a direct impact on somebody's life, right? There is an opportunity, there is a huge risk, and you always have to be mindful of that. And as you going back to your previous question, you have to architect your systems right, your key systems right, that they are always on and in support of the business processes.
Very true. I mean, this redundancy, this being constantly, sort of aware of that, it impacts someone's life, as you said. That's another. It's not really regulation that's driving the business. It's really this. This human ethic that you are, you are responsible for someone's health, and it drives another whole set of, I would say, another whole level of responsibility.
Exactly.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we talked about digital transformation, success, failure. So let me ask you, how do you determine if you're getting right returns on investment? How do you measure that?
Well, if somebody stops me on the hallway and say, Pankaj, I love the system your team has implemented. I love the process you have changed. I think that is the best value, return on investment you get. I mean,
Yes.
obviously, again, and I'm not joking. I mean, that is true. I mean,
Oh, it's
when I hear those kind of feedback, that is more valuable than, yeah, we are measuring some of the KPIs and are we improving. Again, I'm not saying those are not important. We do that. That is important. But experience is the most important. If we are not providing the right experience, I think no matter what you're measuring, you're not having happy customers. And as we say, happy customers are, very important for a successful business, and whether it is
they make
internal
the business.
employees or
Yeah.
end customers.
Very true. No, thank you for that. And that's, yeah, you can have all kinds of metrics, but end of the day, the business exists to serve people. And when you get that direct feedback, that's a very powerful motivation as well to share with your teams. So we're almost at the end of our time, actually. So as a closing note, Pankaj, what would be one or two advices that you would want to give to make digital core to driving value?
Well, I would say don't make digital core to driving, value. Yeah, from IT perspective, see, digital is in our nature. I would
Uh-huh.
say make processes core of your value, make business engagement core of your value. Digital will come along with it. I mean, there's no way you cannot have digital at the core of it. But
Very
if
true.
that's what your focus would be, you would not succeed in that. So my advice would be, don't focus too much on saying that how do I make digital transformation as part of my journey. Actually, it is inherently part of that journey.
Part of your
It's
journey.
about how do you take everybody else along with you on that journey, what the experience is going to look like. That's one advice I would give everybody to pay attention to.
This is great, Pankaj. Thank you. I mean, we are at the end of our time, but really want to thank you warmly for giving us your time today and for some great senior leader insights. And folks, as you saw, and as you heard Pankaj clearly, it isn't about technology. And he was talking about, people, process, data, and then comes technology that builds all of three. That's one of my key takeaways from the session as well. Very thought out, very, very well thought out, and gives all of us a lot to think about. So Pankaj, it was a complete pleasure hosting you today. And I'm sure the
Same here.
audience would have had a great time too.
No, thank you,
So
Amit. Thank you for having me. And I loved chatting with you. So thanks a lot.
my pleasure. So folks, taking leave from here on, but stay tuned for more updates and exploring the possibilities with Evolve. This is Amit Singh with Alcor once again, signing off. Have a great rest of your day or evening, depending on wherever in the globe you are. Bye now.